My name is Julia. I'm 27 years old and I work at a small interior design firm in Seattle. My job is busy, but I love it. It's one of the few things in my life I get to choose for myself. The rest, well, I barely have a voice in my own family. I have an older sister named Melissa, 4 years older than me. She's married and has 3 sons. Triplets, all 6 years old. Melissa is the kind of person who makes the whole world revolve around her, and for some reason my parents think that's perfectly reasonable. As for me, I'm always the backup plan. Babysit when I'm free, babysit when I'm tired, and even when I'm trying to enjoy myself, I somehow end up back on aunt duty. Last year, we had a family vacation at the Oregon coast, a trip I had really looked forward to. I had requested time off work early, excited to take walks on the beach, check out seaside coffee shops, and especially visit an art exhibit I had missed for years. My mom said she'd book the hotel for the whole family, and that this time I'd actually get to relax. Sounds great, right? But when we got there, I found out I'd be sharing a room with the 3 boys, while Melissa and her husband had their own suite with an ocean view balcony. I barely had time to react before my mom handed me the key and smiled. "The boys love you, Julia. They won't be any trouble." No trouble? That first night, one cried over a missing teddy bear. Another ran circles looking for the TV remote. And the third asked me 5 times if he could have snacks at midnight. I was exhausted and barely slept. I lay awake in a pitch-dark room, listening to heavy breathing and little snores, wishing I could vanish. The next morning, I tried to get just 1 hour to visit the exhibit, the one thing I truly wanted to do on this trip. But as I finished getting dressed, Melissa texted me, "Where are you going? Josh is about to head out. Can you watch the kids for a bit?" That bit turned into nearly 3 hours. When I spoke to my mom about it, she gently said, "You're staying for free, sweetie. It's only fair you help out a little." I wanted to scream. Free? I wasn't mooching off anyone. I have a job. I'm independent. I paid for my own bus ticket and I took PTO just to be here. But every time I tried to push back, I was met with disapproving stares. I felt like a stranger in my own family. That entire trip, I only made it to the beach once, while Melissa posted daily photos from spas, cafes, even a foot massage place. And me? I spent most of my time cleaning up cookie crumbs, changing the kids' clothes, and answering an endless stream of, "Aunt Julia, can I?" I didn't say much back then. I just packed my things in silence, and when the trip ended, I promised myself there would be no second time. But I was wrong. This year, another family trip is coming, and my parents are already planning like everything will go the same as before. No one asked me anything. They just sent the itinerary and a message. "Summer trip, we're all going together, just like every year." I looked at the message in the family group chat, my hands trembling. Do they really think I'd step right back into that babysitter aunt role? I started typing a response. This time, I wasn't staying quiet. As I stared at a message from my mom on my screen. "This year's trip will be so much fun, Julia. You're riding with us again, right? I've booked 2 rooms, one for the kids, one for us." I took a deep breath and replied, "Thanks, Mom, but this year I'll be driving myself. I've already booked my own room." Less than 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Julia, what are you saying? Why book your own room? I've already arranged everything." "Mom, I want my own space. Last year, I barely had a minute to myself. I need a real vacation." There was a beat of silence, then her voice dropped, tinged with disappointment. "But that means you're separating from the family. Melissa will have to handle the kids on her own. And who will help when she needs a break?" "I'm not the nanny, Mom," I said, calmly but firmly. "I work. I earn my own money. I'm an adult. And this time, I'm not repeating last year's mistake." That night, Melissa sent me a long, emotional text. She said she was overwhelmed, tired, and felt betrayed that I wasn't stepping up like before. She reminded me that I'm still single with no kids, so helping out is the least I could do. I didn't reply right away. I needed to think, to not act out of anger. But when I read the part where she wrote, I just wanted us all to have a fun family vacation, and now you're acting like you've been deeply wronged. I put my phone down and felt something inside me snap. A few days later, Dad called. He wasn't angry, just concerned. Are you really planning to go separately? Yes, Dad. I booked a nearby hotel, but a private room. I'll join the group activities, but the rest, I want to decide for myself. Melissa's really upset, you know. I used to be upset too, Dad. Really upset. But no one seemed to notice. I thought he might try to convince me, but he just sighed. I get it. 3 days later, Melissa sent a message in the group chat. Impossible to misread. Have your personal vacation, Julia. But don't expect the family to be happy if you skip everything just because you want freedom. You don't get to do that. I didn't reply, but I added an extra layer of privacy protection to my hotel booking. I mapped out my entire schedule, a coastal craft workshop, a sunrise hike, and of course, an afternoon at my favorite gallery. This trip wasn't going to be about babysitting or swallowing my frustration. I had spent my entire 20s trying to please others, keeping things smooth, while my own needs were constantly pushed aside. This time, I was going to be heard. The night before departure, Mom sent a final message. We'll wait for you at the rest stop as planned. Even if you're not riding with us, I hope you'll still come. I read it in silence. I don't hate them. I just refuse to keep playing the role that's been draining me for years. At dawn, I left early. The air was cool and fresh. My suitcase sat neatly in the backseat. My favorite playlist played softly. I smiled. For the first time, I was heading somewhere for me, not for anyone else. And this vacation, no matter what happens, I won't let anyone push me back into a supporting role. This is my trip, and I'll live every moment of it. I had just checked into the hotel when my phone rang. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I took a deep breath and answered. Where are you? Melissa's voice cut through the speaker, cold as steel. I just checked in, I said, trying to stay calm. Private room, like I told you. Private room? She laughed, a sharp, joyless laugh. Julia, are you seriously doing this? Turning our family vacation into your own personal getaway? No. I'm still joining the group stuff, I said slowly. But I also have the right to rest in my own way. I can't believe this, Melissa snapped. I'm juggling 3 kids, Josh is constantly on work calls, and Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger. Who do you think is going to help me if you just disappear like this? I closed my eyes, steadying myself. Melissa, I'm not disappearing. I'm just not going to be an unpaid helper like last year. I'm not 19 anymore. But you're still single, no kids, no real responsibilities except yourself. My sister's voice started to take on a sharp, accusing tone. You have so much free time, Julia. And me? I just need a little help. Just a little... Is that really too much? I gripped the phone tighter. I'm not your backup plan for burnout. I have a job, a life. I need rest too, Melissa. There was a pause on the other end. Then Melissa started crying. I'm exhausted, Julia. I haven't had a single night of decent sleep. You're free, relaxed, and I'm stuck in this endless cycle of fatigue. And you can't sacrifice even a little to help me? My heart sank, but I didn't back down. You chose motherhood. I respect that. But you can't expect me to sacrifice my life just because you're unhappy with the one you chose. So it's all about you now. No. It's about knowing my limits, I said clearly. And I've learned that if I don't protect them, no one else will. The call ended in silence. I set the phone down, my heart still racing with emotion. I knew Melissa would tell Mom, and I knew the storm wasn't over yet. Sure enough, an hour later, Mom called. She wasn't yelling, but her voice was full of disappointment. Julia, what are you doing? Melissa is really hurt. Couldn't you be a little more flexible? Mom, I said slowly. Last year, I was as flexible as I could be. I gave up my time, my energy, my freedom. I didn't even sleep properly. And through it all, you never once asked if I was okay. You only asked if I could help Melissa." She was silent. "I love this family, but I'm tired of being the one everyone overlooks. If you only see me as a temporary fix for other people's problems, then I don't want that vacation." Mom sighed. "You've changed, Julia. I've grown up, Mom." I didn't know if they truly understood or just felt like I was rebelling, but I knew one thing for sure. This was the first time I hadn't backed down under family pressure. And whatever came next, I was no longer the person who said yes just to keep the peace. That night, I took a walk alone along the beach. The sunset lit up the sky in gold, the ocean breeze ran through my hair, and I felt a strange, peaceful clarity. I realized I might be upsetting people, but for the first time, I wasn't betraying myself. I had never thought I'd post anything personal online, especially not about my family, but after the call with Mom and Melissa's passive-aggressive texts, I felt suffocated. I needed to say something, not to vent, to clear my mind. So I created an anonymous Reddit account, went to a casual life stories subreddit, and wrote. I shared about last year's vacation, how I had to sleep with 3 kids while my sister got her own room. I explained how my family assumed I was available just because I wasn't married or a mom. I kept details vague, no names, no locations. At the end, I asked, "Am I wrong for wanting a real vacation for myself?" I didn't expect it to blow up, but within hours there were hundreds of comments. And most supported me. Some said I was too patient. Others said I should have drawn the line long ago. Many shared similar stories, where self-sacrifice was treated like duty and independence was seen as selfishness. I read every comment, feeling both relieved and sad. Relieved that I wasn't alone, and sad that so many of us had been pushed into side roles in our own lives. Then, the thing I never expected happened. Melissa saw the post. She called me at 6 a.m. the next morning while I was having coffee on my hotel balcony, watching the sunrise. "Did you write that?" she demanded, her voice sharp. I stayed calm. "You recognized it was me?" "How could I not? You think you're anonymous? You described everything in detail. Who wouldn't know it was about me?" "I didn't name anyone. But you made me a joke in front of thousands. Do you know how many people are calling me selfish now?" "I didn't make anyone say anything, Melissa," I said. "They're reacting to what they read. And what I wrote was the truth." There was a beat of silence, then she started crying. Not with hurt this time, but with fury. "You destroyed my image, Julia. You humiliated me in front of the entire world." I didn't answer, because what she cared about was image, not truth. For her, it was always about how things looked, never how people felt. 3 hours later, I got a message from Mom. "Did you really do that? You posted about our family online?" I typed back, "Yes, Mom. Because if I didn't speak up, no one would have listened." At first, she was angry. She said I was ungrateful and that I hurt my sister. But then she started reading. Not just the post, the comments too. The words from strangers. Clear, fair, unbiased. By that evening, she called again, her voice softer. "I didn't think people would see it that way. I thought you were exaggerating." "How many times have I exaggerated, Mom?" I asked. But no one listened until someone else said it. After that call, I didn't hear from Melissa again. But Dad called. He kept it brief. "Your mom and I just talked to your sister. We all need to have a proper conversation. But I want you to know, I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." About everything. I was stunned. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard Dad say sorry. That night, I got a message from someone unexpected. Josh, Melissa's husband. "I'm sorry for letting you be taken advantage of. I'm talking to Melissa. I think she needs to change." For the first time in years, I felt like someone in the family actually had my back. Not out of obligation, not for the sake of peace, but because they saw the truth. 2 days after my post went viral, Mom called again, with a short, heavy message. "Julia, the vacation's canceled." I froze. Not out of shock, just an unexpected wave of emotion. Part of me felt relief. Another part felt sadness. I had longed for a vacation for myself after so much sacrifice. But instead of getting that freedom, I ended up paying for the truth being exposed too quickly, too loudly. Since your post, Melissa hasn't really spoken to anyone, Mom sighed. Josh got so upset he left to stay with his parents in Olympia. Your dad and we need time to reflect. That one sentence told me everything had escalated more than I imagined. That evening, I received a message from Josh. I'd like to meet in person, just you and me, not through Melissa, not through your parents. We met at a quiet cafe not far from my hotel. Josh arrived on time, looking tired, but his eyes were clear. None of the awkward avoidance I used to see at family dinners. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up, he said as soon as he sat down. I knew Melissa had control issues, but I didn't realize she was lying. I didn't even need to ask. I knew he meant about the money. I don't blame you, I said. But it's hard to believe you didn't notice. Josh shook his head. She told me she'd given you money. Even described it in detail, cash, in an envelope, left on the kitchen counter. Every time I asked, she had a reason. I gave a dry laugh. If there was an envelope, it must have been meant for someone else. I checked the bank statements and asked Melissa directly. She admitted she only gave you money for pizza a couple of times. The rest, she kept. I nodded, no longer angry, just deeply disappointed. I love Melissa, Julia, but I won't let her walk all over you just because you speak up less. I looked him straight in the eyes. So, what are you going to do? Make her apologize, properly, and pay you back everything she owes. I didn't answer right away. My mother's words echoed in my mind. In a family, we have to be the one who bends. But what I was doing wasn't because I didn't love my family. It was because I finally chose to love myself. The next morning, Melissa showed up at my hotel. Her eyes were red, and she was holding an envelope. Josh stood behind her, arms crossed. I'm sorry, she said, voice so soft it was barely audible. For taking advantage of your kindness. For lying. And for turning a family vacation into a stage to control you. I stayed silent. She handed me the envelope. This is the money I owe you. Every cent. Josh made me recalculate all of it. I didn't open it. I just looked at her and asked, do you think things can ever go back to the way they were? She shook her head. No. And I think maybe that's a good thing. I felt the corners of my mouth lift slightly, unsure if it was a smile or something more bittersweet. I need help, Melissa added. Josh asked me to start seeing a therapist. I agreed, but I'm not sure I can fix everything. I responded slowly. You don't have to fix everything in one day. But if you can start by respecting other people, especially the quiet ones, that's already more than enough. Melissa nodded, and for the first time, she didn't look like the powerful older sister. She looked like a woman trying to find herself again after a long chain of mistakes. And the vacation, though it didn't go as planned, gave me more than any beach, party, or sunset ever could. It gave me clarity. It gave Melissa a mirror, and it gave my whole family a chance to change, or at the very least, to begin learning how. 3 weeks after the first vacation was canceled, I got a call from Dad. He didn't say much, just gently offered, Julia, your mom and I would like to take you out to dinner, your favorite restaurant, The Pines, this Saturday. I hesitated for a second, then nodded, even though they couldn't see me. Maybe, after everything, we all needed a dinner with no arguing, no blame. Just a fresh start. That evening, when I walked into the restaurant, my mom stood up first and pulled out a chair for me. That had never happened before. Dad smiled, awkward like a small-town teacher who'd just fumbled his lecture. We're sorry, Mom said, even before the appetizers arrived. For minimizing your feelings. For giving you burdens that were never yours to carry. I looked at her, and for the first time she seemed smaller. Not in stature, but in the way she spoke. From the heart, not from her role as the adult in the family. "We're planning another trip," Dad added. "This time you can travel separately, stay separately, and join only the things you want to. No one will ask you to babysit, we promise." I asked, "What about Melissa?" Mom glanced at Dad, then said, "She's in counseling," Josh convinced her. "And honestly, she's beginning to realize she needs to change." I didn't respond right away. I thought of all the years I had compromised, shouldered responsibilities that weren't mine. Part of me still feared all these promises would disappear like morning fog, but another part of me wanted to try believing again. "All right," I nodded. "I'll go, but I'm driving myself, booking my own room, and if anyone tries to put me back in the aunt babysitter role, I'll leave, no warning." "We understand," Dad said, and Mom gave a small, quiet nod. A week later, the family group chat came back to life with a new name, Beach Trip Reset Version. Everyone tried to keep things light. Even Melissa only sent smiley emojis, no directions or demands like before. I quietly booked a hotel half a mile from the main place, close enough for dinners, but far enough to have my own space. On the morning of departure, I woke early, made coffee, packed the car, and left the city before sunrise. No one called to rush me. No texts from Mom asking, "Are you on your way?" No reminders from Melissa. For the first time, I felt like a true adult in my own family. When I arrived, I checked in and asked the front desk not to share my room information with anyone except law enforcement in case of emergency. The receptionist smiled kindly. "A lot of guests do that." "You're good." I smiled back. I had learned that setting boundaries isn't defiance. It's self-respect. That afternoon, we met at a seafood restaurant by the beach. Everyone was there. Melissa showed up with Josh and the boys, and for the first time, she brought a hired nanny. A young woman named Ava, cheerful, energetic, and clearly professional. "Thank you for coming," Melissa said. "With no strings attached." I nodded. Maybe, just maybe, something really had changed. Throughout the evening, no one mentioned last year. No one asked me to take the kids to the bathroom or help feed them. I sat next to Dad and told him about a design project I was doing for a boutique hotel. He listened attentively. Like what I said finally mattered, as much as anything Melissa had ever said. When dinner ended, I quietly returned to my hotel. No one followed me, no one held me back, and when I opened my room door, I felt something I'd dreamed of for years. True peace. On day 2 of the trip, I woke up in my quiet hotel room, soft sunlight filtering through the curtains. I made coffee, turned on some light music, and sat on the balcony with a book I'd just bought. For the first time in years, my vacation didn't begin with someone yelling my name down a hallway or kids pounding on my door. Everything was still. After the hotel's breakfast buffet, I got a text from Mom. "We're heading to the seaside park this afternoon. Want to join?" I replied simply, "I'll come by later if I finish up on my end." No promises, no pressure. Most importantly, no guilt. Around 10 a.m., I visited a local art gallery I'd wanted to see since last year. I wandered through the paintings, studying each brushstroke, and for the first time, I felt this vacation truly belonged to me. Just as I was leaving the gallery and planning to grab coffee by the beach, my phone buzzed. It was Ava, the nanny Melissa had hired. "Hi, Julia. I'm sorry to call, but Melissa asked me to see if you could watch the boys for about 15 minutes. She said it's urgent." I didn't answer right away. A chill ran down my spine. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Ava, I think you're great," I said slowly. "But I'm not the babysitter. If Melissa has something urgent, she should have planned ahead or made other arrangements." "Yes, I understand. I'm just doing what she told me to." "That's okay. You're doing your job. Thanks for calling." I hung up, then immediately texted Josh. "Your sister's trying to pass the kids off to me again, this time through Ava." 2 minutes later, Josh called. His voice couldn't hide his frustration. "Thank you for telling me. I'll take care of it." That afternoon, when I showed up a little late to the seaside park, the energy had shifted. Melissa didn't look at me, and Josh was off playing soccer with the boys. Mom came over, holding a lemonade, and said quietly, "We heard about what happened earlier. I'm sorry." Melissa should have known better. I simply nodded. I wasn't here to keep arguing. I was here to live true to myself. While the family rested under the shade of the trees, Melissa finally spoke up. No sarcasm, no complaints, just a simple sentence. "Thank you for not making a scene earlier." I looked at her, calm and steady. I don't need to raise my voice for someone to realize what shouldn't be done. I've said enough. Josh nodded silently, a quiet confirmation. And from that moment on, no one brought up just a few minutes of help again. The following days passed peacefully. I took walks alone, visited seaside cafes, and even befriended a local artist who invited me to join her outdoor painting session. When the family had group activities, dinners, the aquarium visit, or a beach barbecue, I joined on my terms. Enjoyable, never forced. I wasn't avoiding them, but I also wasn't allowing myself to be pulled back into an old role. On the final day of our vacation, the whole family gathered on the beach, the sunset casting golden light over the waves. Melissa sat next to me, for the first time not glued to her phone or chasing after the kids. "You've really changed," she said softly, and I think I'm starting to learn to accept that. I smiled without saying anything, because I knew that real change doesn't come from promises. It comes from saying no, firmly, even when it's misunderstood. This vacation wasn't perfect, but it was the first time I felt truly free around my family. Not because they completely changed, but because I did first, and I held my boundaries. After the trip, I returned to my design studio and my usual rhythm. Everything slipped back into routine, but deep down, I knew something had changed for good. Not just for me, but for my family too. One weekday afternoon, while organizing drafts for a hotel project, I got a short email from Josh titled, "Update on Melissa." I opened it, not expecting what I read in the first few lines. "I took Melissa to her first therapy session this morning. It wasn't easy, but she didn't react like she used to. She listened." Josh shared that the therapist had said something that left both him and Melissa speechless. Being a mother doesn't mean losing your personhood, but it also doesn't give you the right to make others carry your responsibilities. According to Josh, Melissa cried through half the session when she realized how she had used motherhood as a reason to control those around her, especially me. At the end, Josh wrote, "I'm sorry it got this far, but thank you. If you hadn't stood your ground, Melissa might never have looked at herself." I didn't reply right away. Not out of coldness or anger, I just needed a quiet moment to feel something rare. Growth. From the very person who used to make me feel invisible. 2 weeks later, Melissa texted me to ask if I'd have lunch with her. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the park where she used to take the kids. No children, no interruptions. She arrived on time, for the first time in years, with no requests, no complaints. "I've been to 4 sessions so far," Melissa began, "and each time, I realize I've never really listened to anyone. Not Josh, not Mom and Dad, and especially not you." I let her speak. I think being the oldest and growing up as the only adult in the house for a while, I got used to thinking everything should revolve around me. When I had kids, I panicked. And instead of asking for help the right way, I just expected it. Especially from you. I nodded lightly. "I understand. But understanding doesn't mean accepting. And you shouldn't have accepted it," Melissa said firmly, then gave a sad smile. "Josh hired a full-time nanny last week. Ava will help with school runs and teach the kids basic life skills. I'm not asking for your help anymore. I just hope one day you'll see that I'm changing." I looked at her for a long time. I saw the tiredness, but none of the old pride. Instead, there was something real. Humility. the clarity that comes after being overwhelmed for too long. From that day on, things started flowing in a new direction, slowly but steadily. Mom called me weekly, but always began with, "Are you free?" Not, "Can you help me with something?" Dad started sending me pictures of the garden bench he built himself, instead of asking me to do it for him. As for Melissa, she was still relearning how to be just a sister, not a commander. Sometimes the old instincts came back. But I knew how to hold the line now, and she was learning to stop before crossing it. I kept the healthy distance, not to stay away, but because I was rebuilding a bridge. One with stronger supports, clearer boundaries, but wide enough for both sides to meet if we both chose to walk across. When fall arrived, I received a handwritten card from Melissa. Just one sentence, written in the familiar, rounded handwriting I remembered from high school. "Thank you for not staying silent forever." I held the card for a long time, not because I was overwhelmed, but because I knew this wasn't the end of the story. But at least, from now on, I wouldn't be the only one listening without being heard. And that, for me, was a beautiful beginning to any kind of change. About a month after coming back from vacation, I got an unexpected message on Instagram. It was from Emily, the woman who worked at the little bookstore on the corner where I often spent my weekends. "Hi, Julia. I don't know if it's coincidence or fate, but I read that Reddit post, and I knew it was you." My heart skipped a beat. Not from shame, but because I never expected someone from my real life to connect with a story that began with frustration and ended with self-wrecked. Emily had always caught my attention, not because she was flashy, but because of the way she patiently introduced each book with a gentle smile. Always kind, never superficial, like someone who could see right through people, without needing many words. I replied, "I guess that post traveled further than I thought." She messaged back almost instantly. "It did, because it was real. And because so many people have been Julia in their own families, but never found the words." We made plans to meet the following weekend at an outdoor art exhibit downtown. Nothing formal, just two people walking side by side, talking about art, books, and the boundaries everyone should learn to set early on. I didn't tell Emily how many sleepless nights I'd spent because of a careless comment from someone in my family, but I did share how I once learned to stay silent, and how I finally had to relearn how to speak up. She listened without judgment, and said one thing I'll never forget. "You're not selfish, Julia. You're just loving yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that." That's how my relationship with Emily began. Slowly. No pressure, no rush, no need to heal each other, just presence, listening, and mutual respect. As for my family, things are moving in the right direction, in their own way. Melissa continues therapy. Our conversations are no longer tense. One time, she even sent me photos of watercolor paintings she did in an art class. Instead of controlling, I'm learning to let go. Josh is more involved with the kids now. Every weekend he takes them out on his own, giving Melissa time to breathe, or just be herself for a bit. My parents, they've learned something powerful from my long silence. They don't send messages saying, "Can you help?" anymore. Instead, they say, "If you'd like to join us for dinner, we'd be happy to see you." It may seem small, but to me, it's a whole new way of breathing in a relationship that used to suffocate me. I still keep my own room whenever I visit. I still say no when I'm tired, and I still choose peace over pleasing everyone. One early autumn night, Emily leaned against my shoulder on the wooden bench in my backyard, the porch lights casting a soft glow around us. She turned and asked, "Do you think your family really gets it now?" I smiled and squeezed her hand. "They don't have to understand everything, as long as they respect it. And this time, I think they finally do." My story isn't a miracle. There's no dramatic transformation, no tearful finale where everything's fixed. But it's a real journey, where I learned to stand my ground and learned how to love others by first being kind to myself. And if someone asked me what changed a deeply rooted family dynamic after all those years, I'd simply say, I stopped saying yes to things that broke me, and I started living like I was worth it. My story isn't just about reclaiming the right to rest. It's a reminder that prolonged silence can become a burden. I used to be the easy one in the family, until I learned that love shouldn't come with unconditional sacrifice. Today, I have my own life, a healthy relationship, and a family that's slowly learning to love without control. I'm no longer the free babysitter. I'm myself, whole and independent. What do you think about Julia's journey? Was she too firm? Or did she finally do the right thing to protect herself? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and personal boundaries. I sat down on the white-painted wooden chair, facing my parents and my two younger brothers in the familiar kitchen I once considered home. The aroma of pot roast and garlic bread filled the air, evoking memories of family dinners from my childhood. But tonight, something felt different. Nathan and Lucas, my twin brothers, leaned back in their chairs, their expressions triumphant. My parents, David and Margaret, exchanged a quick glance before my mother spoke, her voice carefully composed. "We want to talk to you about an important decision." I set my fork down, feeling the tension rise within me. "We've finalized our will," my father continued, his tone steady but lacking its usual warmth. "And we want you to hear it from us now, so there's no confusion later." Nathan leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, a smug smirk forming on his lips. "To put it simply, everything goes to us." I froze. "What?" Lucas repeated it, his tone light, as if delivering an unimportant announcement. "Mom and Dad are leaving this house, the beach condo, and all their assets to us. You get nothing." The room suddenly fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic from the quiet suburban street outside. I turned to my mother, hoping she would deny what I had just heard. But she only gave a small, firm nod. "We think this is for the best," she said, clutching the napkin in her lap. "You have a stable career, a solid income, but Nathan and Lucas are still finding their way. They need more support." I turned to my father, waiting for an explanation, some sign of hesitation, but he simply stared down at his glass of water, avoiding my gaze. Pain surged through my chest, mixed with rising anger. I had done everything for them. For over a decade, I had paid a large portion of their mortgage, covered countless medical bills, and even helped Nathan and Lucas multiple times when they couldn't handle their own finances. And now, this was how they repaid me? "So after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything?" My voice wavered despite my efforts to keep it steady, but I couldn't hide the deep hurt behind my words. My mother sighed, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Evelyn, you always make everything about money." I clenched my hands under the table, the sharp sting of betrayal piercing through me. "It's not about money," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It's about fairness, about how I've always been there whenever you needed me, but now, just because I'm independent, because I don't rely on you, I have no value to this family?" Nathan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "You're being dramatic. No one forced you to help. You just liked playing the martyr." Lucas chuckled too, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us?" His words hit me like a slap across the face. I turned to my parents, waiting for them to correct him, to reprimand him for his cruelty. But nothing. They stayed silent. And in that silence, I understood everything. I swallowed hard, the pain swelling in my throat. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself. "All right," I said, my voice even. "If that's your decision, then I have one of my own." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what's that?" I pushed my chair back and stood up, my heart pounding. "From now on, don't expect anything from me." I turned away from the dinner table, leaving behind their stunned expressions. The scent of pot roast and garlic bread, once comforting, now felt empty and meaningless. As I walked out the door, no one stopped me. No one called my name. No hesitation, And I knew, in that moment, everything had changed. I stepped out of the house I had grown up in, but this time there was no sense of familiarity, no lingering attachment. The warmth of family dinners and childhood security had long faded. The door clicked shut behind me with a finality that couldn't be undone. The night air was crisp, but I felt a burning heat rise to my temples. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio like I usually did. I needed the silence to process everything. Why was I even surprised? Hadn't I always known that, in their eyes, I was nothing more than their financial safety net? Back in my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch, my hands trembling as I unlocked my phone. The conversation replayed in my head, every word cutting deeper. Nathan and Lucas were getting everything. And me? The one who had paid for their mistakes? Who had covered Nathan's tuition every time he switched majors? Who had sent Lucas money when he wanted a new car for his social media image? I was left with nothing. I opened my banking app. The numbers stared back at me like a brutal reminder. $1,900 every month. The amount I had been sending to my parents to cover their mortgage and expenses. Another $1,200 for Nathan and Lucas every time they called, complaining about money problems. My parents said I was successful and didn't need help. But what would happen to them without my support? Could they even keep their home? I hovered my finger over the automatic transfers section. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. For years, I had accepted this burden as my responsibility. But this was their choice. They didn't need me. They had made that clear. No one was forcing me to continue. 1 second. 2 seconds. I pressed cancel. A notification popped up. Recurring payments successfully stopped. A wave of emotion crashed over me. Anger, bitterness, but also something else. Relief. I set my phone down, sinking into the couch, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders that I had carried for far too long. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying the past years in my head. The vacations I had turned down to cover their mortgage, the late nights working overtime to send Nathan tuition money, the sacrifices I had made believing they mattered. But now that I needed just 1 ounce of recognition, one sign that I was appreciated, they couldn't even give me that. The next morning, my phone rang non-stop. Ma? I hesitated before answering. Evelyn, did you cancel this month's payment? Her voice was sharp with worry, but she masked it with that familiar tone of disappointment. I took a deep breath. Yes, Mom. Because I realized I don't have to do this anymore. She was silent for a moment. What do you mean? Family supports each other. You know we rely on that money for the bills. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice steady. Mom, family only matters to you when I'm paying for everything. I've helped for years, but in the end, I still don't mean anything to you. You're being selfish, Evelyn. Her voice rose. Why are you acting this way, just because of the will? Everything isn't about money. I laughed, but not out of amusement. Not about money. I was the one paying the bills for you, for this entire family. If money doesn't matter, then why don't you ask Nathan and Lucas to take care of you instead? Silence stretched on the other end of the line. I could picture my mother's face. Angry, frustrated at being confronted. I can't believe you're acting like this, she finally said. This isn't the Evelyn I raised. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight in my chest. Mom, this is me. But you never really saw me. I hung up before she could say anything else. Standing there in my apartment, emotions swirled inside me. I knew she would call again. Dad might try too. And Nathan and Lucas would definitely jump in with their mockery or accusations. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to answer. I was no longer the family's ATM. I was no longer the only one carrying the weight. I had let go, and it was the best decision I had ever made. I set my phone down on the table, feeling both weightless and heavy at the same time. Mom had said exactly what I expected, accusing me of selfishness, of betrayal, of abandoning the family. But what she didn't realize was that I had heard those words so many times that they had lost all meaning. I looked around my apartment, suddenly seeing it in a new light. It was no longer just a stopover between work and endless bank transfers to my family. It was mine. The only space where I didn't have to carry anyone else's burdens. I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank statement. The list of monthly expenses stared back at me. Transfers to my parents, to Nathan, to Lucas. A constant reminder of the dependency they had placed on me. Not anymore. I canceled them one by one, each confirmation feeling like a sharp, clean cut from the past. $1,900 for the mortgage, gone. $600 for utilities, gone. I sat there, staring at the screen, which now showed no active recurring payments. And for the first time in years, I felt free. But strangely, an emptiness crept in. I had spent so much time, so much effort being the responsible daughter, the one who carried what Nathan and Lucas were never asked to. Now, without those obligations, what was I supposed to do with myself? I stood up, poured a glass of water, sipping it slowly. Outside the window, the city buzzed on, life moving forward. And yet, I felt like I had just stepped into an entirely new world, one where I could set the rules. My phone vibrated, a message from Lucas. "What the hell are you doing? Nathan just told me you cut off the money. Do you think this is funny?" I read it, but didn't reply. A few minutes later, another message popped up, from Nathan this time. "You're a traitor. Don't expect anyone in this family to see you as one of us ever again." I smirked, not because I was happy, but because I finally saw the truth. I was never truly part of this family. I was just their sponsor. I put my phone down, stepped onto the balcony. The night breeze brushed against my skin, cool and refreshing. I took a deep breath. I had done the right thing, and nothing would make me turn back now. The next morning, my phone rang non-stop. I didn't even need to check the screen to know who it was. Slowly, I picked it up. Mom's voice burst through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Evelyn, what are you thinking?" she nearly shouted, her voice a mixture of anger and desperation. "Why did you cancel the payments? You know we need that money to cover the bills." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I've helped enough." "Helped? You're abandoning your family. Have you even thought about how this affects us? We sacrificed so much for you, and this is how you repay us?" I let out a dry chuckle. "Sacrificed? Do you not see the irony in that? If I owe you for raising me, haven't I already paid you back by funding this entire family?" Mom hesitated, but then her voice turned sharper. "You've changed, Evelyn. You let money control you." "No, Mom, you let money control you," I replied, my voice surprisingly calm. "But I'm not your personal bank anymore." She exhaled loudly and hung up without another word. I stared at the screen. Then more messages flashed. "Nathan, you're ungrateful. Mom's crying because of you." "Lucas, you think you're so smart? You'll regret this one day." "Nathan, don't bother showing up at our parents' funeral when they're gone." I read each message, anger bubbling beneath my skin. Not one apology, not one question about why I had done it. They didn't care how they had treated me all these years. They were just mad because I had stopped funding their lives. The phone rang again, Dad this time. I let it ring. It kept ringing. I turned off the ringer, then went into my settings. Lock. Nathan. Lock. Lucas. Mom. Block. Yeah. Block. Once I was done, I set my phone down, closed my eyes, and exhaled. Silence filled my apartment, a rare and unfamiliar peace. No more ringing, no more messages filled with guilt trips, no more manipulation. I stepped onto my balcony, breathing in the crisp morning air. This peace felt foreign, but also incredibly freeing. For the first time in years, I was truly free. 3 weeks passed in silence. No more relentless calls, no more guilt-laden messages from Mom. I began to believe they had finally accepted the truth, that I was no longer their financial safety net. Then, on a Friday evening, a message appeared on my screen. Family meeting, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late. Short, cold, no explanation. I looked at my mother's message, feeling a sinking sensation in my chest. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, smaller yet persistent, whispered that maybe this was the last chance for things to get better. Maybe, after everything that had happened, they truly wanted to have an honest conversation with me. I decided to go. As I stepped into my parents' house, the tension in the living room was suffocating. Nathan and Lucas were already seated on the couch, arms crossed, their expressions cold. My father stood near the fireplace, while my mother sat in the armchair, her eyes red and puffy as if she had been crying. Before I could speak, my mother did. "Evelyn, I don't understand you anymore." Her voice trembled. "How much further do you want to go in destroying this family?" I frowned. "What are you talking about?" My father let out a heavy sigh. "You've put us in serious financial trouble. If you keep being stubborn, your mother is going to break down." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So now I'm the reason Mom is exhausted? What about all those years I carried this family financially? She seemed just fine then." Nathan scoffed, shaking his head. "You always make everything about money. Do you really think the world revolves around you?" Lucas leaned forward, arms crossed in defiance. "Come on, you have a good job, a comfortable life. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? You're just paying the price for being selfish." Their words cut deep. I had come here hoping for a genuine conversation, but all I was met with was manipulation and pressure. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "If this is why you called me here, then don't waste your time. I'm not coming back." My mother's face went blank. "What did you just say?" I stood up, taking one last look around the house. I have done everything I could to be a part of this family. But if my worth to you is only measured by how much money I bring in, then I don't need that kind of love. No one said a word as I turned and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. I left, for good this time. 2 days later, when I returned to my apartment late at night, I immediately sensed something was wrong. My front door had been sealed shut with industrial foam, covering the doorframe and handle. I reached out and touched the hardened material, solid and cold. Someone had done this on purpose. I took a step back, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't some harmless prank. This was an intentional act to keep me out of my own home. Without hesitation, I grabbed my phone and checked the hallway security camera. I fast-forwarded through the footage from earlier that evening. And then, there it was. Lucas, wearing a baseball cap and a hoodie, but his posture and stride were unmistakable. He smirked as he held the foam spray can, carefully filling every crack and crevice of my door. My hands trembled with rage. I didn't hesitate. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I handed over the footage as evidence. One of them nodded as he watched the video. "Do you want to press charges?" I gripped my phone tightly, a chill running down my spine. If I let this go, it would only escalate. Lucas wasn't just angry. He was willing to cross the line to retaliate. I took a deep breath, my gaze firm. I want him held accountable. The next day, my phone rang again. I ignored it. Then Dad. Then Nathan. Finally, I picked up. "Evelyn, your brother got called in by the police. How could you do this to your own family?" My father's voice was harsh, but I responded calmly. "Lucas vandalized my property. If he doesn't want to face charges, he needs to pay for the damages." My father's tone dropped. "How much?" I didn't hesitate. $3,000. How could you extort your own brother like this? I let out a dry chuckle. "It's not extortion, Dad. It's called consequences." The next morning, my account received a $3,000 transfer. with a bitter note attached. I never want to see you again. I read the message and felt nothing. A notification lit up my phone. A message from a distant relative. Evelyn, is this true? People are saying you abandon your family even though they're struggling. I frowned. Another message came in. Evelyn, how could you cut off your parents and brothers like this? They took care of you your whole life. I opened social media and immediately understood what was happening. My mother had been spreading a completely false story. She had written a long Facebook post claiming that I had turned my back on my family in their time of need, that I was selfish, only cared about myself, and had left my aging parents and struggling brothers with nothing. People who didn't know the full story flooded the comments, offering sympathy to her and vilifying me. I scrolled through the responses. So sad when successful children forget where they came from. Parents sacrifice everything for their kids, and this is the thanks they get? Evelyn must have let money get to her head. Anger flared in my chest. Not because of the stranger's passing judgment, but because my own family had rewritten the narrative, turning me into the villain. They didn't mention that I had paid the majority of my parents' mortgage. They didn't say that I had covered tuition bills and even personal expenses for Nathan and Lucas. They left out the fact that Lucas vandalized my apartment and that I had to call the police to protect myself. They only painted the image of a heartless daughter who turned her back on her family. I sat in silence for a few minutes, thinking, should I stay quiet? Ignore everything and let them control the narrative? No. I had endured their manipulation for far too long. I opened my app and tapped on New Post. If my family wants to make this public, then let me tell the truth. And I started writing. I laid it all out. Every dollar I had sent over the past 10 years. The money I had spent to help them keep their house, pay for tuition. Even the funds Nathan and Lucas used for new cars and vacations. I spoke about how they had always seen me as an ATM, not as a daughter or a sister. I exposed how Lucas had sealed my apartment door with industrial foam, forcing me to involve the police. I didn't turn my back on my family. My family never saw me as part of them, unless I was bringing in money. And now, I choose to stand up for myself. I hit post. Within hours, my post caused an uproar. Relatives started asking questions. Some commented surprised because they had never heard these things before. An aunt messaged me privately, asking if it was true that I had financially supported my family for years. Some extended family members even began calling out my mother for twisting the truth. But the strongest reaction came from my immediate family. Mom called immediately. I answered. Her voice was so furious she was nearly incoherent. Evelyn, what the hell did you just do? I remained calm. I told the truth, Mom. If you have the right to tell your version, so do I. She was breathless. You're humiliating this family. Your father is so ashamed he won't even leave the house. Have you thought about how this makes Nathan and Lucas feel? I clenched my phone tightly. Did they think about how I felt when Lucas vandalized my home? Did they think about me when I was breaking my back to pay their bills? She went silent. But then, as always, she twisted the situation. You're destroying this family. Her voice grew cold. If you do this, don't expect to come back. We are no longer family. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Mom, you destroyed this family, not me. And I hung up. No tears, no regret. For the first time in my life, I felt relief. I had lost my family, but maybe they were never truly my family to begin with. That phone call with my mother was the last time I heard her voice. After my post, my family went completely silent. No more angry messages from Nathan, no more furious calls from my father. All contact was severed, as if I had never existed to them. But this time, I didn't feel guilty. I was free. At first, the silence felt unfamiliar. The evenings I used to spend solving my family's financial problems were now mine. No more desperate late-night calls. No more canceled plans because someone needed my help. I threw myself into work, channeling my energy into a major project my company was developing. With laser focus, I not only completed it ahead of schedule, but also secured a promotion. On the day I received my promotion letter, I stood in my new office, looking out over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, feeling proud. For the first time in my life, I could enjoy my success without feeling obligated to share it with anyone. And then, I decided to travel. I had always dreamed of taking a long trip, but every time I thought about spending money on myself, I was pulled back into my responsibility. But now, nothing was holding me back. I booked a ticket to Italy. When the plane landed in Florence, I felt like I was stepping into an entirely new world. The cobblestone streets, the outdoor cafes filled with the scent of espresso, the historic buildings whispering stories of the past, it all made me feel more alive than ever before. I wandered through Florence's narrow alleyways, spent hours in museums marveling at Renaissance paintings I had only seen in books. I ate the freshest pasta of my life, sipped rich red wine as the sun set over the terracotta rooftops. I was no longer the person who constantly worried about others. I was no longer my family's bank account. I was just me. One late afternoon, I was sitting in a small cafe near Piazza della Signoria, enjoying a hot cappuccino. "You seem to really like this place." I looked up, meeting the warm gaze of a stranger. He had light brown hair, a relaxed smile, and an effortless confidence. "I think I just fell in love with this city," I replied with a small smile, taking a sip of my coffee. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me without asking, as if we had known each other for years. "Me too," he said. "This is my third time coming back." I raised an eyebrow. "A loyal traveler, huh?" "You could say that. My name's Alex. Evelyn." We talked for a long time. He was from New York, worked in interior design, and had a deep passion for European architecture. His voice was calm, steady, sometimes laced with effortless humor. I couldn't remember the last time I had talked to someone without pressure, without tension. With Alex, there was no pretense, no expectations, just a simple, chance encounter. A genuine connection between two strangers. As I stood up to leave, he smiled. "If you ever want company while exploring Florence, I'd be happy to join you." I hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I think I'd like that." The next few days felt like a dream. Alex and I wandered through local markets, sampled gelato, and walked along the Arno River as the golden sunset painted the sky. He didn't ask about my family. He didn't probe into my past. He just saw me for who I was in this moment, a woman finally embracing her freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt valued. Not for my money, not for my responsibilities, but just for being me. One evening, as we sat on a rooftop terrace, I gazed at the glowing city lights and smiled to myself. I had once believed that my happiness depended on my family. I had once thought that if I gave enough, they would love me the way I wanted to be loved. But the truth was, I didn't need to beg for love from people who never truly valued me. I could create my own happiness. And right here, under the Italian night sky, I knew I was doing exactly that. After returning from Italy, I stepped back into my life, but with an entirely new mindset. I was no longer the Evelyn who sacrificed everything for a family that never appreciated her. I was stronger, freer, and more myself than ever before. The months that followed were peaceful. Work thrived, I joined Sunday yoga classes, met new friends, and finally embraced the life I had put on hold for too long. But then, news about my old family started to surface. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Aunt Linda, my mother's cousin. "Evelyn, I know you don't care about the family anymore, but your parents are really struggling. Your father is working night shifts at a warehouse, and your mother is taking hourly cleaning jobs. They both look exhausted." I paused for a moment, staring at the screen. I had seen this coming. When I was financially supporting them, my parents never once considered standing on their own. They relied on me as a lifeline, never stopping to think if I was tired. And now that I had cut them off, they were forced to face reality. I set my phone down without replying. A few days later, I heard from a friend that Nathan had lost his job due to poor performance, And Lucas was still chasing his dream of becoming a social media influencer, but getting nowhere. I wasn't surprised, and I no longer felt responsible for them. They had the chance to change, to learn independence, but they didn't. And now they had to face the consequences of their own choices. I once thought that not spending Christmas with my parents and brothers would make me feel lonely, but as the holiday approached, I realized that I had people who truly cared about me, and that was what mattered most. I decided to host a small gathering at my apartment. Aunt Daisy arrived early, carrying a box of homemade cookies and a warm hug. "I'm so proud of you, Evelyn," she said as I welcomed her in. I smiled. "You're the only person in the family who's ever said that to me." Daisy looked at me, her eyes filled with both understanding and sadness. "I just wish they had realized your worth before it was too late." I didn't respond. Instead, I poured her a glass of wine and invited her inside. One by one, my friends arrived, bringing wine, desserts, and laughter. That entire evening, I laughed more than in any Christmas before. No forced conversations. No pressure to meet anyone's expectations. Just me, being happy on my own terms. As the clock struck midnight, I stood on my balcony, gazing at the twinkling Christmas lights across the city, and felt something I had never truly felt before. No more invisible burdens. No more feeling used. Just me, my life, and the people who truly loved me for who I was. And that was the greatest Christmas gift I could ever receive. I sat in my armchair, watching the city lights reflect against my window. Outside, the world kept moving, cars and people filling the glowing streets. But inside me, there was a stillness I had never known before. I had once believed that family was everything, that I had an obligation to sacrifice for them, no matter how they treated me. I had convinced myself that if I tried hard enough, if I gave enough, they would finally accept and love me. But the truth had been far different. Family isn't defined by blood alone. Family is made up of those who appreciate you, those who don't take advantage of you, those who love you without conditions. And my parents, Nathan and Lucas, they had never truly seen me as family in that way. I thought back to the way they cut me out of the will, as if to make a final statement that I was worth nothing to them except for my money. They believed that would break me, that I would beg for their acceptance again. But what they didn't realize was that they had unknowingly given me the greatest gift of all. They had severed the last remaining tie between us. They had set me free. I had once been a woman burdened by responsibility, expectations, and sacrifices that were never appreciated. But now, I had the power to choose my own life. I could go anywhere, do anything, and never again worry about a call demanding money or a guilt trip for not obeying their wishes. I could spend my time with people who truly loved me, friends who stood by me, even when I had nothing left to give. Aunt Daisy, who had quietly supported me all along. I could love and be loved freely, in a way I had never experienced before. My eyes drifted to my phone on the table. There were no missed calls from my family. They had let me go. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of that. I picked up my glass of wine, taking a slow sip, letting its warmth spread through me. I had once lived for my family. Now, I chose to live for myself. And that wasn't selfish. That was freedom. Evelyn's story isn't just personal. It reflects a reality that many people face in society. We grow up believing that family is the safest place, that love always comes with responsibility. But the truth is, family bonds don't always mean appreciation. Sometimes, walking away isn't selfish. It's the only way to protect yourself. When you are constantly being used, when your sacrifices go unrecognized, you have every right to put yourself first. Because in the end, this life is yours. What do you think about Evelyn's story? If you were in her position, would you keep sacrificing for family, or would you walk away to find yourself again? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss more meaningful stories about life and family.